Hello and welcome to another video about the Lancome Bronze Absolu Quint. Just in case, to remind you, this is the eyeshadow palette that we are talking about. I've already done a video demoing this palette, but in that video I only used the matte shades, and then I also used the liquid eyeshadows from Pat McGrath on my lids. I can leave a link up to that here if you're interested to check that video out. And I have worn this quad like in my private life last week. But the one thing that I have not done yet, and I'm sure you can see the telltale signs by me wearing this olive green jumpsuit today, that we're finally going to use the one eyeshadow that I was the most attracted to and yet I haven't gotten around to using yet, which is this beautiful olive green right here. I have a look in my mind. I'm really hopeful that it will turn out as beautiful as I expected it to turn out, but also I'm still very intrigued by this formula. It is by far the biggest surprise and revelation to me that Lancome is making like interesting eyeshadows. I'm going to take the Inglot Eyeshadow Keeper as usual as my eyeshadow primer. I thought today we would revisit a topic that I don't think I've talked about recently on my channel, which is movies and TV shows, because I've got two movie recommendations for you, and we can also just chat very briefly about the latest season of The Crown, which I binge-watched very recently, so I'm now completely up to speed with the latest from The Crown. But let's talk about the movie recommendations. First and foremost, have you already seen the new Barbie movie? And if you have not, I promise you your expectations are all wrong and you need to go see it, because ultimately, do you like to laugh? If the answer is yes, you need to go watch Barbie. It is hysterical. Taking as usual my Glow Lust by Auric. And if you have no idea, what the movie is about, who directed it, what kind of a film it is, I can completely understand your hesitation to go see a Barbie movie. I bet you're expecting something like Barbie Girl from Aqua, something silly with really dumb humor, especially if you've seen Will Ferrell in the trailer and you're like, oh no, Will Ferrell humor. I am not a huge fan of Will Ferrell. My husband loves him, but my husband and I, while we have a lot of things that we share in terms of our humor, there is also the type of humor that I do not understand one bit, which is most of Will Ferrell's humor. There are exactly two movies that I've ever enjoyed with Will Ferrell, and those are the Eurovision movie, because he just nailed Eurovision so well. He did his homework and he absolutely nailed it. I'm going to take the Dior Backstage Foundation as per usual lately. I think there's like just a tiny little bit left in here. And the other movie I think was a movie with Matt Wahlberg where they were playing partners, like they were policemen and they were playing partners, which was acceptable. But usually I am not into Will Ferrell's humor one bit. So if you're expecting Will Ferrell humor, this is not it. The reason that I got really excited about this movie, the Barbie movie, there are two reasons actually. One, Greta Gerwig took on the directing when it was announced that the movie is finally going to come to fruition, and Greta Gerwig is an exceptional movie maker. I don't know that she's ever made a bad movie. And the same holds for Ryan Gosling. Ryan Gosling's literally never made a bad movie. He directed one, from what I understand. His own directorial debut was not taken too well, although it might be a little bit of a matter of preference. I personally haven't seen his movie, so I can't really comment on how good the movie that he directed is. But as far as his actor, portfolio, I don't think he's ever made a mistake in his life. All of his movies are amazing and he is an exceptional actor. And I think part of the reason I like him so much is because if you watch him during interviews, he's a little bit like aloof, he's quite witty, and I feel like that's really his personality, and I really dig his personality. Anyway, the little like love letter to Ryan Gosling was totally uncalled for, but what I wanted to say is that my expectations rose significantly when I heard about Greta Gerwig being involved as director, Ryan Gosling starring as Ken, and the exceptionally beautiful Margot Robbie being Barbie. Now, actually, you know what? I don't think Margot Robbie has made a bad movie either, at least from what I have seen. She was exceptional in I, Tonya. Anyway, that aside, you should go watch the Barbie movie because it is just heartwarming. First of all, it is a feast for your eyes. it is a visually it is a treat. It is, I laughed so hard throughout this whole movie. You have no idea. And it's the kind of movie that is light-hearted, it is funny, but it like has snippets of seriousness to it because it addresses feminism. I'm going to take the Dior Skin Correct concealer now, but it also doesn't take itself too seriously. It's just so well done. Like, all of these little themes are so well interwoven that you just leave the theater feeling absolutely delighted and light as a feather. I just had so much fun, and I cannot wait for the movie to be available for streaming so that I can watch it again. Or, you know, streaming as in like downloading somewhere, because I would actually really like to watch it with my husband. I went to the movies with my colleagues, but I'm sure my husband would really enjoy the movie as well. It was just so delightful. And I unfortunately haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. We want to see that together with my husband. We're both really big Nolan fans, and I kind of don't feel right going to see the movie without him. And unfortunately, a lot of things we can do in the evening have to be done separately, because we have a 5-year-old and someone needs to take care of the 5-year-old if we are to go to the movies in the evening. So that makes evening activities a little bit more complicated for us. So we haven't seen Oppenheimer yet. I'm going to take the corresponding Dior Backstage powder, also in the shade 2N. The concealer was in the shade 1N. And we are probably going to watch that when we go to Sofia, because we are going to Bulgaria again in less than 2 weeks now for our summer holidays. So we can leave Grandma and Grandpa there to enjoy Nicola's shenanigans while we enjoy the movies with my brother and my sister-in-law there, because they're both movie fanatics. They're both in the filmmaking business, so I'm sure they would be intrigued to watch Oppenheimer at the very least. I've already heard some reviews of the Oppenheimer movie, like very superficial reviews, because I don't want to spoil anything. But some people call it quite boring because it is 3 hours long and quite heavy on the conversation part, which I believe given the topic. But some people found Interstellar boring, and Interstellar was also very long, and I consider Interstellar to be one of my like top 3 favorite movies of all time. I can watch and rewatch Interstellar pretty much at least once a month, and I always really enjoy it. With the notable exception of Anne Hathaway's character, whom I really disliked. Anyway, taking the Too Faced brow laminating wax thing. And the second movie recommendation I have for you. So Barbie is currently running in the theater, so if you want to check it out, you'll have to go to the movies. The second movie recommendation doesn't run in the theaters already for a while because it is an older release, but it is still such a good movie. I don't know if you're familiar with Jordan Peele. He's made a couple of like I wouldn't call them horror, but more like psychological thriller kind of movies. Would that be how you qualify the genre of his movies? Anyway, he's made Get Out, Us, and Nope. And I wanted to recommend Nope to you. I have not watched Us yet, and we did watch Get Out last year. Now, Get Out was a good movie, without any doubt. But because I don't want to give away too many spoilers, the only thing I'm going to say about Get Out is that the plot twist reminded me of a different movie that I have watched in the past and also really enjoyed. If you want, we can chat about that in the comments, just so we don't give away any spoilers in case people still want to watch this movie. But it is a really good movie, like very much. He has a really good way of like creating a certain atmosphere in his movies and like sucking you in. But what I absolutely loved was Nope. Nope is such a good movie. For bronzer, I'm going to take the beautiful bronzing brick from Victoria Beckham in the shade 2, and I just kind of like always mix the 2 shades. I don't really use one over the other unless I'm going for like a very specific look. Nope was such a good movie in every sense of the word. Visually, in terms of the atmosphere, in terms of the story, it had like a very unique story, and it had so many levels to it. I really like movies that are not literal. You have to like dig into the deeper levels, you have to think about it, you have to think about what the filmmaker was trying to tell you with this story, connect some of the dots yourself. There was definitely a scene in that movie that up till the very end, and actually up until someone on Reddit explained it to me, still was like, I don't understand what was the connection there. So I really love that about a movie, when it makes you think and connect the dots, or you know, have someone on Reddit connect the dots for you. Have you watched any of Jordan Peele's movies? What do you think about them? Have you watched Nope yourself or Get Out? Are you a fan of the genre to begin with? We really like these sort of movies, although I personally like can only take them in small doses every now and then, because otherwise they give me like a very like negative feeling and I get nightmares and all of that, so I have to take them in small doses. But it's been a while since we had watched one of those, and Nope was certainly not one of the movies that has like very like disturbing imagery to it. For my blush I'm going to take an oldie but a goodie. This is Nude Venus from Pat McGrath Labs, because I have been missing it. I haven't really used it in a hot minute and I've really been missing it. Last week I ordered one of the Armani Luminous Silk blushes, the one that Martina always talks about, the shade number 10, and I've been really looking forward to getting it, but they haven't shipped it out yet. I haven't really had this experience. I ordered via Douglas. For those of you who are here, you will know that Douglas, which is like our local Sephora, they pretty much ship the next day and it's there the day after. Literally like within 48 hours you will have your order. But this was actually new, because this specific product was being shipped by a Douglas partner, and Douglas partner is failing me. They haven't really shipped it out yet. I sent an email to customer service and I'm really hoping that they're not going to like cancel my order or something because the blush sold out or something. So I'm still hoping that it will come in. For highlighter I'm going to take one of my favorite highlighters, which is Venusian Nude from Pat McGrath Labs. I really like the color and the formula of this highlighter. It is definitely one of my absolute favorites from Pat. Although I love and enjoy all of my highlighters from Pat, I pretty much exclusively use almost all of her highlighters. I'm going to quickly spritz my sponge with a little bit of Fix Plus just to set all of the powder makeup on my face, and then we can move on to the eye look. Let me quickly tell you what I'm planning for a look today, and the one that I envisaged from the very beginning when I laid eyes on this beautiful olive green shade. So I'm going to put this through my crease, and I want to put sort of like a combination of these two shades here, the satin, I wouldn't call them metallics, I would call them more like satin shimmers on my lids. So this one in like the more lid outer portion, and this one more in like the inner corner and inner lid. And then I want to do like my thick blocky wing using this green eyeshadow. The only one I'm going to forgo today is the very dark brown shade, because I don't really have any use for it today, and I've already demoed it in the look that I mentioned where I used the Pat McGrath liquid eyeshadows. And I want to show you, because I noticed that with the YSL Clutch Quad, that when I go in with my fluffy blender brush, there is quite a bit of powder kick up, whereas you can see here there's barely any, if any, powder kick up. So this formula is definitely slightly different to the YSL one. I'm going to take this shade and start running it here through my crease and outer corner, and running it up towards the brow bone area. I'm not going to be creating too much definition here in the outer corner, because I'm going to use this olive shade as my blocky liner, so I don't really need extra depth in the outer corners. I just need a nice defined crease. Oh yeah, and we were going to talk about the last season of The Crown, which basically centers quite a bit over Charles and Diana, like the dissolution of Charles and Diana's marriage. They already started hinting at that at the end of last season, because last season was also quite heavily focused on Charles and Diana, but in this one they really dig into the dissolution of their marriage. And I'm not going to reiterate the obvious. I think all of us, like collectively, always felt bad for Diana. I think she's always been considered one of the most sympathetic royals. But what this season specifically changed my mind on, and I saw in a completely different light, was Charles. Now let me tell you, when you live in a foreign country and you're not quite familiar with the royals or who they are, and you just, you know, kind of like see them, I didn't really have much of an opinion on most of them, and I always strongly disliked Charles because he looks a bit like a wuss. We have a fabulous word to describe him in Bulgarian. We would say putio, which is completely impossible to translate into a different language, but a bit like a spineless, you know, someone who doesn't have their own opinion kind of person, someone who's very much in the shadow of their mom. I'm going to very briefly interrupt myself here to tell you that I'm going to pop on a little bit of glitter glue for the shimmer shades, because last time I used a shimmer shade from this quint, I didn't use any sort of metallic, I didn't use any sort of glitter glue, and now I'm curious how these are going to look like over a glitter glue. I mean, they're still satin shimmer, so don't get your hopes up for glitter or anything, but I'm just curious whether there will be slightly more impact. Also, my NYX glitter glue in my depotted container has finally started to really dry out. Luckily, I have a backup. Anyway, we were talking about Charles. So I totally changed my mind about Charles because I think this is the first time that I've ever like been introduced to who he is as a person. Oh, okay, I had not used this shade on my lids yet. I love this. This is such a beautiful, like, neutral, slightly cool leaning taupe shade, like brown taupe. I love this shade, and I have to say, over a glitter base, these are looking just like a soft metallic, and I'm really enjoying the finish. This quint has done something to me. I can't explain it to you. I'm going to do a bit of blending in a little bit, but now I'm just going to flip the brush and take the more champagne-y version of the satin shimmer shades in this quint, and I'm going to apply that here in the inner portion. I'm going to put that in my inner corners, although it is not exactly a very like brightening shade for me. But anyway, I saw Charles in a completely different light. I had no idea that he was, first of all, so erudite, so passionate about modernizing the crown and the royal family, and he has started many charity organizations that are very admirable. And honestly, I felt quite bad for him because at least in the crown they make it quite clear that he never really wanted to marry Diana. If he had been allowed to marry his beloved Camilla from the start, so much tragedy could have been prevented, because the man was just deeply in love with Camilla his whole life. But you know, the crown, they have certain expectations of who you're supposed to marry. So I'm telling you, this series just solidified my belief that being born into royalty is probably one of the worst fates you can ever have. Because if there was ever determinism in its purest form, it is being born into royalty. It is just as deterministic as it gets. Like, you and I still have the illusion of free will. We can make decisions about a lot of things, including who we want to marry. These guys have barely any. These guys have almost like no control over their own lives. They're like little puppets. And I felt bad for them. Also, I'm digging this look. I really like this quint. I don't know what to tell you. I'm going to take my pencil brush from Sonia G because I like the little pointy tip, and I'm going to go into this gorgeous olive green shade, and like I said, we're going to do like a blocky liner on my top and bottom lash line. So I'm just going to start to slowly build that up, and as I blend it out, it will probably become more of like a black base, because this shade is I'm pretty sure this shade has a dark base to it. So for the, you know, smoking out portion of creating this wing, we're not going to see probably that much of the green, but I'm hopefully going to be able to lay some of that down, maybe even wet it to intensify it in a little bit. I'm also going to run that here on my lower lashes, because that's the idea with my blocky liner, that it just goes all around my eyeball. So yeah, it was very interesting. I view The Crown half as documentary, because obviously as someone who has not grown up in the UK, I've only ever seen whatever is in the newspaper. So I don't really know much about the British royal family or a lot of like the stuff that you people in the UK will be deeply familiar with and like really annoyed with hearing about another word of, you will probably be like, oh, I've heard this like 100 million times before, but I have not. So for me, I treat this series almost as a documentary, like an entertaining documentary about the crown. Have you guys watched it? What did you think about it? I think also the acting is exceptional. Every single person that has played in that show is just so good. So this doesn't have to be like precise or anything, it has to remain smudgy and a little bit messy. So don't worry if it doesn't have a point or it looks a little bit almost misshapen. I want to intensify that green, the greenness of this shade, so I'm actually going to spritz my brush here with a little bit of Fix Plus with this shade on, and then I'm going to not swipe it, but I'm going to stamp it over what I have already laid down, just to intensify that green sheen. And I will do that specifically on my upper lashes, because on my lower lashes I don't really need that. I just want it to appear slightly more green on my upper lashes. I chose the Velvet in Affair from Lisa Eldridge to complete this look because in my opinion Velvet Affair just, the tones of Velvet Affair work so well with green, like olive green eyeshadows. Can you not achieve this very same look with your Midnight Sun palette? Let's open up the Midnight Sun palette just so I can convince you. Yes, you can. Absolutely 100%. You can just take this one on your lids, this one through your crease, this one as the blocky liner, and you're good to go. Will it be like 10 times more impactful compared to the Lancome Quint? Hell to the yes. So if you go out and buy this Lancome Quint off of my recommendation, I want you to be fully prepared for what you're getting yourself into. You're getting into a far more subtle formula in terms of the finish. And the reason I enjoy this finish so much is I just really like the texture of these eyeshadows. I love how they apply on the eye, and I'm just so intrigued by this new formula coming from a brand that I never expected to hold any appeal to me. That is the reason I'm just so deeply intrigued by this little quint here. And I love the color story. Honestly, I think they've nailed the color story because these are not your typical warm neutral eyeshadows. They're neutral to slightly cool leaning eyeshadows with that beautiful, like eye-catching olive green shade in the smack middle. And the formula is, in my opinion, impeccable. So if you're someone who prefers both kind of textures on the spectrum, you like your glittery, but every now and then you can go for the subtle as well, then you're definitely going to enjoy the Lancome formula because it is just flawless. And what I will do on occasions when I'm using a subtle formula like this, but I'm missing just the tiniest bit of sparkle, you can always take the tiniest bit of sparkle. Just take your little brush, dip into one of Pat's Astrals, and then let me grab a mirror so I'm not completely blind here. And then just like sort of like press a few flakes from that Astral over top of the metallic shade, and voila, a few flakes of that glitter, just so when you're standing in artificial lighting there's a little bit more going on to the look, but you don't have to. You should be able to get satisfaction from the Lancome Quint as it is, because otherwise there's really no reason to buy it. Anyway, because I've made so many of you like interested in these quints, I wanted to be perfectly clear about what the formula and the experience is. So if you're buying these and you have a bunch of Pat McGrath eyeshadows and specifically the Midnight Sun palette, do not buy especially this quint for the color story or the textures. Buy it for the interesting new formula and the new experience in terms of the formula. Anyway, I think I'm going to close off this video now. I'm really hoping that you enjoyed it. Let's chat about movies, TV shows and Lancome eyeshadows in the comment section below. As usual, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!